That's good. That's good. Good to see everyone. So welcome to our summer or August all-staff meeting. So good to see everybody. Wow, we even have video. Look at that. Jazz, you are a savant and amazing. So thank you for that. We'll click to the next slide so we can get off of me. So we always go through our vision and our mission. Again, we get that down into something that's easy to remember, and that's that we're here again to be the best for our employees, our clients, and our community. And we do that on the next slide through our vision and also by being the best. Next slide. And our service philosophy and why, and then how we become a relationship and that we're a relationship building. All of the things that we do here are about relationships, right? We bring people into this building so that they can have relationships and we have relationships with each other. So generally here I talk about all sorts of hospitality things and how we do this and how we serve our clients. So today I'm going to go a little bit deeper and we're going to spend some time embarking on a journey that we're going to have here for quite a while. And actually I'm going to argue a little bit that we've been on this journey for many, many years. So the city of Minneapolis is starting, and this last year they really came forward and said that they're starting to really push for a culture, and their culture is a culture to be anti-racist. And so we want to talk about what that means to us, what that means to our culture, and how we can grow towards that goal, and what the things that we're doing here at the convention center actually add to help the city of Minneapolis become more of an anti-racist area. So sometimes when you use words and you try to define things, it can be a little confusing, and sometimes talking about something like anti-racism can be confusing. So I'm going to start this journey. We're going to walk through and talk about some of the words that we use, some of the things that we're doing, and try to make it something that you can start to think about as you work to grow in this too. So there's going to be two things here that I want to start on. First, a little bit of a ground rules. First, we're on this road together, and we're working towards growth and learning together. Everyone's perceptions and ideas are valuable. Sometimes people want to do those publicly, and sometimes people want to do those privately. So just know that I'm open to either. Public conversation is awesome, and having those conversations in groups like this or in future groups is really great. But also you can come to me in private and talk about how being an anti-racist or things that you're learning and how that connects to our work here at MCC. And also, these topics are hard. I am not an expert. We do have an expert here today, but I am not an expert. I'm learning right along with you. And sometimes when we're talking about issues, we might make a mistake. We might say something that maybe came out wrong, or we might have something that someone perceives in a way. So I'm asking for all of you to just have grace with each other, to have an open heart, and to potentially forgive someone if they do say something that maybe offends you, and talk to them about that and tell them why maybe that offended you or why you think a different way. And to have that open conversation is something that's really, really important. And also know that sometimes when you learn about things, you might change your opinion, or with more information, you might think a little bit different. So crack that door open a little bit in your brain and start to think about things maybe a little bit differently, and just be open to listening and hearing and understanding and being able to talk through that with each other. So let's jump in on some definitions. I told you that there's a lot of words that we use, and so I wanted to talk about what it means to be anti-racist. So we're going to go through a definition here a little bit. So in general terms, it means to be actively against racism and other areas of power that seek to disadvantage another person or a group. So sit with that just a second. So a lot of people say, well, I'm not a racist, or I treat everybody the same. And maybe that's okay. But really what an anti-racist culture is it's a culture that actively pursues the different systems of power and tries to make changes that reduce those negative effects that power can bring to different situations. So when we're anti-racist, we're actually taking action, we're doing something against the use of power to disadvantage another person. So you kind of got to think about that. And so I thought about what is a situation here at MCC, a very, very simple situation that might show kind of how anti-racism could come into effect. And you'll see that I'm not even going to talk about race here. So this isn't just about race. It's not that narrow, but it's about how we as a culture look at that power and advantages and disadvantages. So you guys are all employees at MCC. You have a certain power. That power is knowledge of this building, right? Have you ever heard someone say knowledge is power? Well, knowledge of this building is a certain level of power. When a visitor or a guest comes to MCC, right, they may have never been here. And so when they walk up to MCC, they don't have power, right? They don't know where anything is. They don't know where their event is when they come to the building. And so how you use your power is important, right? You could say when they walk in the building and they look lost, you could say, yeah, I'll show them where they can go if they give me $20, right? That's using your power to benefit, right? To get something. Or you could say, well, I'm going to share my power with them. I'm going to share my knowledge, my information, and so I'm going to tell them how to get to their event. So that's an anti-racist way of working, an anti-racist way of dealing with that situation. Very simple, I know, but it maybe will help you think about how to be in those situations. And how do we make sure that the way that you do that is the way that we want you to do that, right? We put systems in place, right? There's a rule that you're not supposed to take a tip from someone or take money from someone while you're doing your job, right? There's also training that everyone goes through called standards of service that teach us how we deal with customers and clients and guests when they come to the building. So those are systems that we put in place so that we can be more anti-racist, or we can have good customer service in those situations. So that's a simple way to kind of think about how this process works and what it means to be an anti-racist and what it means to have power. And all of us, no matter who we are, have power in different situations. And we get to choose how we use that power in those different situations, and if we are going to take advantage of someone, or if we're going to share our power and help someone in those different areas. So I've just used power like 3 or 4 or 5 times in the last 30 seconds. So let's talk about power a little bit. So power can be defined as the ability to access and control resources. That means the knowledge, right, that I just talked about. So how do you control that? Or to exert influence. So what does that mean? Well, let's say that you're the best friend of the supervisor, and so you are always talking to the supervisor, and everything in your department then gets whatever you are talking, whatever you want, because you're exerting your influence on the person who has the power so that they then provide you in your area what you want. That's a way to exert influence. And there's usually a place where there's advantaged groups and there's disadvantaged groups. So let's talk about what it means to be an advantaged group or a disadvantaged group. So this is what's called a power and privilege wheel. It's very colorful, not so colorful here, but it's very colorful. There actually are some sheets on your table that you could take and look at right now. They should be at the middle of your table, so you can take them right now and take a look at them. And I'll explain a little bit how this wheel works. So on the inner part of the wheel, so you can see in the middle of this circle, it says power. So that is really talking about traditionally in our country or our society, what has been thought to be the place of power. So for example, it shows if a person is white, if they're Christian, if they're male, if they speak English, those places or those people have generally had more access to resources in our country than other people. So just as an example, we'll look at age. So you can see age kind of at the top right of your circle. So just think about, like, right, usually an adult will have more access to resources than a child would have access to the resources. So the adult is closer to that center area of power. So that's kind of how you read it. And then on the outer area of that circle, it's really talking about places where, or people where, with certain traits that have generally not had as much access to resources in our country. So when we think about that, that could be people of color, non-Christian people, females, non-English speaking people. Those have generally had less access in our society. So again, thinking back to that age issue. So again, the child has less access to resources than the adult is, so they are in more of a disadvantaged situation. So think about that, right? A child can't get a driver's license, so they just can't drive around. A child can't probably go to the bank and get a loan in order to buy a house. So in those situations, from an age standpoint, they're in a disadvantaged situation versus the adult who has more advantage when it comes to resources. So that's a way to look at the circle and see how the circle works. So I want you all to take just a minute to look at the circle, and there should be, I think there's a little spreadsheet on the side of your piece of paper that lists some of those areas where you could be in an advantage or you could be at a disadvantage based on our society and based on this power and privilege wheel. So take a few minutes. You can see it says age, ethnicity, gender, etc. Think about how you fit in all of those areas and if you are advantaged or you're disadvantaged in those areas. So I'll give you a minute to think.
Does anybody not have one?
So we get more. And as you look at that wheel, think about how it makes you feel. Think about those areas where you're advantaged. Think about those areas where you are disadvantaged. So is anything surprising you? Is it pretty clear where you kind of line in? So I'll use myself as an example here so you don't have to talk about yourself in some of these issues. But when I did this for myself, something that was kind of shocking to me is that on every single area, I was on the advantage side in every different thing. And it kind of spun my head a little bit because I had never thought of myself in that way, or that that's where I would come in on this. And so that really puts, right, a lot of pressure on me, a lot of responsibility on me, because when I walk into a room, I walk into a room with all of these advantages that are shown on this power and privilege wheel. And so I get to have a choice, right? I get to have a choice if with those advantages, I'm going to share my power, or if I'm going to hold on to the resources just for myself. And, right, it can be positive and negative. On the positive, I have all the power to make change, right? I can do things, I can make decisions, I can make sure that policies and procedures are not done in a way that would hurt anyone. I can change those structures, but then in the negative, right, when I walk into the room, some people may look at me as part of the problem. They may not trust me because of the power and the advantages that I have been given. And so that's hard to make sure that, how do people understand, if I'm an ally, or if I'm against them, or if I'm going to have those traditional ways of holding power and resources back. And so that is a really important part of this, just feeling this for yourself, because it allows you to ask those questions and say, am I going to be on the positive side? Am I going to try to help in this situation? Or am I going to be on the negative side and hold on to the power and not share that power as we go forward? So each of us brings their self and their self dynamics and everything that these traits have shown for you to their life and to work. And really understanding this is really important as we go forward as a work culture. And really what we're trying to say here from an anti-racist standpoint is power and choosing winners and losers is really the root of racism, and it's the root of holding people down, and it's the root of not growing as a culture, as a community, as a nation. And the fight for resources is also one of those root causes of racism as we go forward. So if we can actually work to think about this and think about how we share power and how we share resources, we can actually make steps to make ourselves be a better, more anti-racist culture going forward. So what does this mean, and why is this important here at MCC? How does it make us better? How does it fulfill our mission to be the best? I think it does in many different ways, and we want to go through some of that, and I think it aligns really well with everything that we've been doing for many, many years here at MCC. So we can only be the best for our employees when we understand each other as employees and through our relationships. If you think about something that we've been doing for quite a long time, our impact meetings. So remember, in November, we get together and we sit down and we talk about what we want to do for the next year, the goals that each department has, and how we want to work together in the coming year to make sure those goals come together. That is an anti-racist act. That is a part of an anti-racist culture. Because what? We're sharing ideas and we're sharing power. It's not just management coming up with ideas and putting those ideas onto each and every one of you. Everyone has a voice. Everyone has the ability to bring forth an idea so that we can work together to make sure that that idea comes to fruition. So that's a part of where we see a lot of the benefits of this kind of anti-racist culture, and something that we've been doing for many, many different years. And when we talk about our clients, right, we invite a lot of people into this building, and we're really called to be hospitality professionals in everything that we do. But what is service, right? Service is giving up power. When you decide to serve someone, you're giving up what you want to do in that moment to help them, to serve them, to make sure that they have what they need in order to do what they're wanting to do here at MCC. And so by knowing those attendees, knowing their clients, and serving them, you are performing an anti-racist act. You are helping in bringing them into the convention center and making sure that they have the resources in order to be successful. And then when we think about our community, right, we've always said we want to make an impact on our community. And everything that we do here is to try to make an impact on our community. And we have always tried to be the face of our community. That when someone comes to the convention center, they see our community in all of the different components of our community here working at MCC. And what that can do is it can make people feel more welcomed when they come to Minneapolis, and more welcomed in order to go out and explore the rest of the city. And what that does is, right, it puts more spending, more jobs, more residents that want to live in Minneapolis because of that diversity and because of that ability to be together. And so we are able to show that off, and we are able to really help our community grow. And we can be a voice for our community when it starts to come to how do we become anti-racist? How do we work together? How do we share some of that power as we go forward? So this is just the start of the process, and I wanted to get in front of you and start saying the word anti-racist and start trying to give you an idea of what that can mean, so that as we move through the process over the coming weeks and months and years, when you hear that term again, or when we go through different types of training, you can think back to how this sharing of power can be very, very helpful in how we do our business here. It can make our culture stronger, and it can make us a better place to work. So I appreciate all of your information, and in looking at these the Power and Privilege Circle. If you want to talk to me about it, or if you have questions about what it means, I'd love to talk to you about it. I'm not going to throw it out here today because we're just starting this, and I know that sometimes it's hard to talk about these types of things, but I'd love to talk about this with you, and can definitely have time in the next few weeks, even longer than that we can go through this if you have questions about how this is rolling out. You will see training coming from the city. I'm not sure if it'll be this year, but it could potentially be next year along this topic. And I think what we can go into those trainings knowing is that we have a great culture here at MCC. We need to keep working on it, and we need to keep growing it. And being an anti-racist culture is something that I'm committed to, and I hope that you're committed to. And that power dynamic is something that we really should look at each and every day to make sure that we understand it and we don't do things to disadvantage another, and that we share power here at MCC. And we know that we have a good culture because we have people that stay here. And so we've got some anniversaries to celebrate that are always cool to see. And all of these people have worked hard over many, many years to make sure that MCC is a great place to work. We've highlighted a couple there. So Dale at 44 years, that's pretty impressive. And John at 32 years, very, very impressive. But even if, I think, Sarah, you're probably our newest person right now. Is this your first day or your fourth day? So even if you've only been here 4 days, you have an opportunity to make an impact at MCC, just like everyone else. So new hires, we do have some in the room, I believe. So Wendy is here from Guest Services. Wendy, you got to stand up, Wendy, and you got to wave so we all know who you are. So congratulations for Wendy being here, and also it was just announced that she's going to take on a detail in the Guest Services event coordinator position too, so you'll see her around quite a bit, not only as the concierge. I'm not sure now if Akua is here. Akua, all right, Akua is here, OMS, so welcome to Akua. Adude is also here, welcome to Adude. Ahmed Mohammed is also here. Ahmed Youssef, right up here. Charles Hicks. Charles is right up front and center. Samatar is here too, so welcome Samatar. Isabel is also here. Dominicus, I don't think I saw Dominicus. So Dominicus, we'll get him later. Darius Scott is right there. Welcome Darius. Posey, I met Posey yesterday, so Posey is here. And then we talked about Sarah from Exhibitor Services right there. So, oh, I'm sorry. And on the top, Chloe. Chloe, right back, Minneapolis, part of our team. And then this guy named Trevor Taberzi. So congratulations, Trevor, for a promotion that Trevor got as Technology Services Coordinator. So as you can see, we're getting a lot of new people at MCC, and that's super exciting. It's super exciting to get all of your new energy, your new ideas. You've got wide eyes, and you're looking at things differently than some of, I'll just say me, the older guy that's been here a while. And so Thanks a lot for all the energy that you're bringing. Thanks a lot for helping us grow our culture and grow us as an anti-racist culture. But really excited for all that you guys are going to do here at MCC. And the next slide, human resources. So I believe we have both here. So just wanted to make sure you knew Christine and Ryan. So Christine right here, and Ryan back with HR. So any of your HR questions, they are done in business services regularly. So we can make sure that you get in and talk to them. So now the most exciting part of our time here today. So for Meet Minneapolis, Gavang is here, and she's going to help us walk through kind of some next steps and some things that will help us on that road to being an anti-racist culture. So let's welcome Gav.
Testing, all right. I am Gava. I'm the Vice President of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Access with Meet Minneapolis. I'm going to share a few information about myself, a few data points about myself with you, because at the end of my presentation, I'm going to ask you to share a few things about yourself with me. So I'll just start out with saying that I am a extremely proud Hmong American. So raise your hand if you know of a Hmong person or know who Hmong people are. I feel like everybody should raise their hand because Key is actually Hmong. So thank you. Key's buddies, you get to know he's Hmong. Okay, so I'm a proud Hmong American, and the Hmong people are originally from China, though we spent the last 300 years in Southeast Asia. And whenever I am challenged, whenever I have some difficulties, I actually lean into my Hmong identity. Just know that, nations have come and fell, and, politics have changed, but the Hmong people were still Hmong, and that identity is very strong to me. My purpose right now in life is to use my diversity, equity, inclusion, and access skills to actually create a more just and equitable community. I know that sounds kind of like esoteric, creating a just and equitable community, but I feel like it's not, because all of you are here in this room because I think you also believe in creating a just and equitable community. And that's what the purpose of the MCC is creating a vibrant, just, and equitable community. So I think that's something that we have in common. And I've been with Meet Minneapolis for over 2 years. I applied for the job as the first Vice President of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion with Meet Minneapolis because I saw the murder of George Floyd. And like a lot of you, I saw it on social media first before I saw it on the news. And at that time, I was working for Minnesota Public Radio in a leadership position, and I just felt that there was a place for me to do racial healing in the city of Minneapolis that can lead to better outcomes, a more just and vibrant community. And I needed to be here in the city of Minneapolis. And so I told my husband that very day that I thought we needed to move to Minneapolis so I can do my work. And he just looked at me and said, why don't you just get a job there? Instead of uprooting our 3 children. I was like, yes, you're right. So I applied for this position. I'm so glad that in the last 2 years, I was able to actually use my skills to create a better Minneapolis for everybody, especially my children. So with that, oh my gosh, I don't see myself in the okay, all right. So Jeff talked about what anti-racism is. And what I'm going to do today is kind of fill in some of the blanks and talk about because Jeff has already talked about what it is. I'm actually going to lead with what it's not, and then talk a little bit more about the details, the history of the anti-racism model, how you can all apply it to your current job and make the MCC a better workplace. So what anti-racism is not is, it is not about assigning blame, shame, or guilt. So it is so easy when we think about race and the challenges in our own personal history around race to assign guilt, shame, and blame to ourselves and to others. And so as you embark on your journey of learning more to be an anti-racist person and an anti-racist organization, please be aware that that's not what the outcome is. Also, it's not about being nice or honorable or kind or good or loyal. So loyalty and honor are two characteristics that are very valued in the Hmong community. Do you have honor? Do you have shame? Do you bring honor to your family? Do you bring shame to your family? In Minnesota, I would say that one of the value characteristics is actually being nice, because we don't want to upset anybody. And so as you're learning about the anti-racism model and going through your personal journey, please consider that this is not about, outing yourself or outing anybody else and not being nice enough, not being honorable. Because the journey is going to ask tough questions as you learn more and educate yourself on the anti-racism idea, and you're going to have these questions be asked of you. And you can get really stuck really easy if you fall into the rabbit hole of, well, I did something or I observed something and I didn't do X, Y, Z, or I did, so therefore I'm not an honorable person, or I am an honorable person. So don't be stuck there as you go on your journey. Also, it's not a confession of the best or worst thing you've ever done regarding race. The reason why I bring this up is because it is so easy to get stuck in, as you're on your anti-racism journey, and confessing to like your worst sins or the best thing you've done around EDIA, and it's not about that. It's also not about judging yourself or others. As a person who is a person of color, after I go through some EDIA training with some person that has more power than me, sometimes I actually get an apology at the end of the session. And I always kind of chuckle, because the session wasn't about people judging themselves and judging others. It was actually about gaining skills and knowledge and information to make themselves and their organization better. And it was not about, and I do not expect any apology from anybody. And so it's not about apologies or judging. It's not about preaching or self-righteousness. And it's also not about making lists. Because one of the things you will encounter in your anti-racism training is that it will ask you to consider all of your privileges. It would ask you to consider the many times that you showed up as an ally or didn't show up as an ally. And so what I see folks do is they make lists, and they get stuck on their lists. So it's not about list making at all. So I talked about what the model is now. Now I actually want to just talk a little bit more and add to what Jeff said in terms of the definition of what is anti-racism. So it's a framework, so it's a way of being and thinking. So that's what a framework is, a way of thinking and a way of doing an action that asks you to actively, and I really want to underscore the word actively, because in anti-racism, to be an anti-racist organization, you can't be complacent. You can't be a bystander. You have to actively confront, challenge, and dismantle racism of all in all its forms. Within your, so there's two pathways, within yourself and within systems of oppression. And when I think about systems of oppression, I know that it means different things to different people. But what are systems of oppression? So systems of oppressions are institutions, so schools, police, city government, faith communities, and policies and processes, the way that we do things, that puts one group at a disadvantage and lifts another group up. So that's what the systems of oppressions are. And anti-racism also will ask you to educate yourself. So it's about learning, it's constant learning. You cannot become an anti-racist individual, and you cannot create an anti-racist organization unless you're willing to educate yourself and be open to that. Also, it involves the conscious effort. So it's a lot of effort to eliminate racism by changing. So you have to change. You cannot be part of an anti-racism organization unless someone like Jeff, who's has said that he has privilege and power. He's changing himself and changing the organization. And so you as individuals, as people who make up the staff of the NCC, you have to also be willing to question your power and privilege and take those actions and to create change and to transform yourself and the organization. into a more welcoming and anti-racist organization. And those changes can be around your policies. Policies are things that are written down. And so if somebody doesn't do something, we go to the policy book and we said, this is a policy. Practices are things that we just do because we know that they work. And sometimes we hear our policy about practices, they're like the rituals that we do. And so practices are just things that we do because we just do them. You have to be willing to not do some of those things anymore to be an anti-racist organization. And then change your attitude. That's very, very important. The next slide. And please, if you have any questions, let me know. And raise your hand. I'd be willing to take questions now. I'm also willing to take questions later. So I think that one of the things that we as a community and the general public is not aware of is the origins of and the evolution of the anti-racist model. I think there's a lot of myths and misinformation out there about what it means to be an anti-racist organization and who is and is not an anti-racist person. So I wanted to bring up this slide about the origin of the anti-racist model and its evolution. So who all has seen videos of the civil rights movement, like MLK's walk of Washington? Okay, a few people. Okay, this is where the anti-racism movement began. It was really the work of Dr. Martin Luther King, the Freedom Riders, the civil rights movement during the 60s, and the civil rights movements the movement that continues now is that they identified, I'll give you an example of the action and the anti-racism example. They identified that Black people were asked to sit in the back of the bus, or Black people were not allowed to be in the bus, or Black people were allowed to only drink from certain water fountains. And so what Dr. King did was like, well, what we're going to do is we're going to have a boycott, and we're going to boycott, and then we're going to march, and we're going to risk actually being put in jail and being in prison, also risk physical violence. And so that kind of action is really the heart and soul of the anti-racism movement, which is that you have to take action. You might not end up in jail, you might not get beaten, you might not do X, Y, and Z, but you have to be willing and be committed to take that action. Another foundation for the anti-racism movement is actually decolonization. And so I come from a group of people who have been colonized. My family lives in Southeast Asia, and for 300 years, the French, was all over Southeast Asia, and they imprisoned people, forced them to work in diamond mines, the whole bad stuff. And then after the French was done with us, then it became the time of the Americans, and we had to fight their war. And so anti-racism also has its roots in notions of decolonization, of allowing and people wanting to have their own lands, their own rights, and access to their own resources, and not allowing people who are in power and privilege, whoever those people are, to oppress and subjugate them. And then the third foundational characteristics of the anti-racism movement is that actually there's a lot of research and a lot of academic foundation for the anti-racism. So when you think about anti-racism, it's not just people, sitting around talking about what was best. There's actually a lot of research that says that this model is right. And this is a proven model that can transform individuals and systems. And so from the academic foundation, there's this notion, this idea of critical race theory that helps inform the anti-racism idea. And now when I think about critical race theory, you probably hear about it in the news because people use critical race theory to ban books. And that's actually so unfortunate because that's not why critical race theory was created. Critical race theory is found in academia, and it was actually an idea that if a policy or a legal law is unjust, then we will actually sue the institution to actually dismantle that policy, that law, or a law that's unjust. And now it's become something else, which is, again, really unfortunate. Jeff showed you the power wheel, and the power wheel actually speaks to intersectionality. So that's also one of the foundational characteristics of the anti-racism, is that we're not just one thing, we're many things. I'll just use myself as an example. I am a person that's very privileged. I am privileged because I'm able-bodied. I stand here, I can stand, and so I don't have to think about, my route as I move through the city of Minneapolis, or where I'm going to park, or to do any additional research, because there's plenty of parking spaces for me and plenty of stairs for me to walk up, so I don't have to go look for the elevator. So I am very privileged like that. But I'm also, because of the intersectionality, I feel very strongly that being an Asian woman has actually really, I have faced a lot of, racism, a lot of sexism because I was an Asian woman. I don't want to go into a room being an Asian woman without having an exit plan, because I have been a victim of violence because I'm an Asian woman. I have a media background, so I interned for like a Pulitzer, one of the biggest newspapers in the United States in the 90s. And when I was an intern, there was a well-known columnist that was sexually harassed all the female interns. And all the male staff members didn't care, but the women looked out for each other. So we had a system where we would call each other if that person came by, and then myself and the female interns would actually run to the bathroom and hide out until he passed. So I feel like I felt both. I've been privileged to be able-bodied, to be educated, to speak English, though English is not my first language, I have to say that. And I speak Hmong, and because English isn't my first language, just like a show of hand, how many people here, please raise your hand if English is not your first language. Right. Thank you. So because English is not my first language, I always feel like I have imposter syndrome when I speak English, because I still dream in Hmong, and I still talk in Hmong to my parents. And when I'm out and about, at the grocery store, if I meet a Hmong person, I don't speak to them in English. I speak to them in Hmong first. So I feel like really lucky because I have certain power, and I feel like throughout my life, I've been at some disadvantage because according to the power wheel, I'm further away from the center. And so right now, where we are with the anti-racism movement is that Black Lives Matter and a lot of other theories that are not anti-racism, they actually draw on some tenets and some characteristics of anti-racism. And so it is a model, it's a way of thinking. I have to say that there's no best practice model in EDI work. You're going to hear about a lot of different models. Anti-racism is one of them. You have to believe in it in order for it to work. And so, the next slide. Okay, so believing in it. So what's in it for you? I've been up here, Jeff has been up here, and he's talked about the value that it brings to the NCC and to you as individuals. So I will talk first about what's in it for you. Like, why should you care? And so what this model will ask for you is to actually stretch your intellectual muscles. And like anything in life, if you don't make that muscle stronger, you're not going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. You're not going to be able to, if that muscle is something physical where you're lifting something, you're not going to be stronger. This muscle is an intellectual muscle. So what it's going to do is it's going to give you the ability to see privilege and power as an individual to individuals, and actually to see it as privilege and power, to look at it and recognize it when it's about systems. So the anti-racism model, a lot of people think it's important and they like it because historically when we think about racism, we think it just is about, it's an affliction of the individual. We think it's just one person being bad. So we think that if it's just a person being bad, then all we need to do is to just fix that person or get rid of the person from our group, and that's going to solve the issue. And so what the anti-racism model is going to allow you to do is to see systems of oppression. And I think that's really powerful. And so once you change the systems of oppression, you can create a more equitable workplace and community. So I talked about A, B, and C. Okay, and then, get this, you're going to be a better version of yourself. Don't we all want to be better versions of ourselves? So I put the latest Spider-Man because my son, who's 10 years old, is really into Spider-Man and he's really into multiverses. And so you want to be that person that no matter what multiverse you're in, you're going to be the best version of yourself. You're going to be either the Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland, Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man. And so being the best version of yourself leads to the best version of the MCC. So people move to, so what's in it for the MCC? So, okay, so you change yourself, you transform yourself into recognizing oppression, into being a better version of you. Why does this matter? Why does it matter to the MCC? So Jeff talked about creating a better organization. I would say that the MCC is a part of the tourism and hospitality ecosystem. So an ecosystem is all the things that are working together positively or negatively. If the MCC becomes a more equitable and culturally fluent organization, I know that it's going to impact the tourism and hospitality ecosystem in the Twin Cities. And also, it's going to actually have a better financial outcome. If you do any research, this is real research, diverse teams and more culturally fluent teams that are not racist actually leads to better financial gains. And this is what the research says about diverse teams and anti-racist outcomes. Actually, it's very challenging to supervise diverse teams because you have people who come from different ethnic, racial, language groups, socioeconomic groups, and you're asking folks to actually work together. So it's very challenging, but according to the research and my own observation as a person that does EDIA work, if you can actually get over the first few challenges, you actually have a team that's more creative, that works better together, and actually has better communication. But you have to stick with it, you know? And so it's exactly the same thing with anti-racism. It's very challenging when you initially hear the word racism, you know, because you don't think you're racist. It's really challenging when someone asks you to confront your power, the power that you have, and your privilege. And you just want to repeal from it because those are very difficult things to do, to be honest with yourself, you know. But if you're able, like diverse teams, if you're able to stick with it, what comes out on the other side is a more equitable workplace, more vibrant and thriving tourism and hospitality, Minneapolis, and then also more dollar bills, more money for the MCC. That's proven in research. Okay. All right. So I'm going to do a power and privilege exercise with you all. Okay. So I'm going to demonstrate that all of us has one, like Jeff did, about having information. I'm going to demonstrate that all of us here in this room has one power. Okay, so I'm going to ask all of you to stand up. All that's the one thing. How long do you think you can stay at? 5 hours? Okay, all right. Okay, all right, a few minutes, okay. So going back, okay, so you can all sit down. Thank you. Thanks. Okay. Going back to what I talked about being able-bodied. Everybody seemingly looks able-bodied in this room, so that's one of the powers that you have, is that you're an able-bodied person, okay? And so one of the ways that we give power to people who are not able-bodied is we have elevators, we have escalators, we have all sorts of things. We have guardrails, all sorts of things to make sure that people who are not able-bodied or who do not have sight are able to actually come into this organization. But what you probably don't know is that you actually, all of you, everybody in this room has an accommodation. Okay, you are able-bodied, but you have an accommodation. So do you know what your accommodation is as able-bodied people in order to do your work? Your chairs. Yes. You, even though you're able-bodied, can only stand for so long. So some people said a few days, a few hours. But you actually already have an accommodation to help you do your work. Okay. And so this is the way that this is how your anti-racism training is going to go. It's going to help you see these things and help you recognize that you, even though you're able-bodied, already have an accommodation. It's not hard to give an accommodation or to give power to someone else. So I'm actually going to read a few things, and if this applies to you, please stand up, and I'll give a pause so people can see who's standing up, okay? All right, so the first question that I'm going to ask you is, I can go shopping alone most of the time and be pretty sure that I'm not going to be followed or harassed by store employees. Okay. All right, thank you, sit down. Okay. What I am told about American history and the people who found this nation, I am told about people who look like me. If this applies to you, get up. So this isn't about shame or guilting anybody, but I know that when I was in, I was a typical Asian student. My parents were like, A- is terrible, A plus. But I remember when I was learning American history in elementary school and throughout college, that I never saw anyone that looked like me. The people that looked like me were just like coolies building railroads, Just the people that looked like me were just doing laundry in American history. And so the sensation of not learning about American history and not seeing people that look like me almost drove me crazy. Because sit down. It drove me batty because it's like looking in a mirror and not seeing your own reflection. It can make you think that you're a ghost or you don't exist. And that's American history, okay? Okay, the next question is, I can be pretty sure that I've had an issue at work or out in the community and I ask to speak to the person in charge, I will be speaking to somebody of my own race. So I'm pretty sure that if I ask to speak to the person in charge, I will be facing or speaking to somebody of my own race. Okay. So the thing is that when you don't have that connection with somebody and some issue or dilemma has happened, whether you're at the store or at work, there's an automatic defensiveness like this. I'm not going to be believed because we don't have that similarity in our race or ethnicity. Okay. This one is if I have an owie, a cut or whatever, and I needed to get a bandage that's flesh color, the bandage would match my skin. So just look around. Okay. All right. Thank you for sitting down. Okay, thank you. Please sit down. All right. I have a bunch of questions. I'm not gonna dwell into it anymore because I think you all kind of understand. And so I want to just open it up to the floor to see if you have any questions for me about anything that I discussed. Okay. It's okay if you don't have anything, that's fine. I will be around after the session, and I'd be happy to talk with you. Riley and Jeff has my contact information, and we at Meet Minneapolis, we're at service to the MCC. So we are your partners. We want to make sure that you get everything you get. That includes learning about EDIA. So if something comes to you a few days from now and you want to talk, or if you just want to have a private conversation with me, I'd be happy to talk with you. So that is it. I'm going to leave you with an essay, a very short essay. It's just one page, and I ask that you read it. And it's called Unpacking, White Privilege Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. It's been around since 1988. It is really a good essay. And read it. It's going to ask you these questions that I just posed to you. And I think it's going to help you on your journey to be an anti-racist individual and organization. I really appreciate the invitation from Jeff to be here today. I think a lot of leaders could have done it differently, and I appreciated that he wanted to make sure that you all had the tools that you needed to be successful in your EDIA and anti-racism journey. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. That really is the end of our all-staff meeting, so I know a lot of topics to kind of get your head around and think about, but with that, I will just say there are uniforms in the back. If you need uniforms, you can stop by and we will make sure that you get uniforms. Otherwise, have a great day, have a great holiday weekend.